Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Erik Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hey. How's it going, Erik?
I've been watching a lot of Sesame Street.
Ooh, I used to watch a lot of Sesame Street as a kid.
A lot of Sesame Street. The little one is very enamored by Elmo right now.
Oh, yeah.
Elmo's like king.
Elmo's like the gateway drug to Sesame Street, because my daughter got into Elmo first, and then she got into Sesame Street. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've been watching a ton of Sesame Street. I'm also like low-key sick. I've been sleeping like 20 hours a day.
Man.
Well, I'm hockey sticking out of it now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's too bad. Hope you feel a little bit better, this week.
Yeah. I've been moving around better today after I literally woke up at 1 p.m. So I woke up and I was hungry, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
But I feel much better.
Your carpets are clean.
That's right. That was awesome and an extreme amount of effort, because did you know if you clean your carpets, by the way, July apparently is carpet cleaning month.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know this, but apparently you can just say things on the internet and then it's true.
Yes.
But if you clean your carpets, you need to get all of the stuff off your carpets for them to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Makes
involved
sense.
me dismantling my house the night before.
We're talking everything.
Yeah.
Off the carpet.
Yeah. Like I dismantled.
Furniture.
Yeah. And we were burning a little midnight oil to do that.
Yeah.
And that might be why I was sick.
It could be.
Just like, and then we also had our ducts cleaned at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and sanitized. So the whole house has been like sanitized.
Yep. All those cleaning chemicals put you to sleep.
I won't rule it out, but the house smells stupendous.
That's awesome.
I feel good. My office is finally clean.
I don't think that we've had our ducts fully cleaned since we bought the house. So I think it's definitely something that we want to do.
It's nasty. It's like, the guy's like, you want to see? I'm like, not really, but I will. He's like, look at this. Look at this stuff. I'm like, oh, God.
We did. So the returns that are right above the HVAC are in the hallway. We have cleaned those out before, and they get really gnarly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How are you doing?
Pretty good. We had my mother-in-law visiting for this past week, and it's not like a typical mother-in-law experience. She's actually very nice, and we love her very much. So we're always happy to have her around. And, my mom is great too. Like, we had her visit during our trip to Colorado, and she stayed with us for a week. So, making fun of mother-in-laws, we don't need to do that. But the first thing that I think of anytime we're talking about mother-in-laws is if you Google the focus group sketch from I Think You Should Leave, it's one of the few sketches that is actually safe for work, but that one is pretty funny. And it starts out one way and then turns into, takes a left turn like most of those skits into mother-in-law jokes. So otherwise, Cassie was in a wedding, so I watched the kids for the weekend. So she had a lot of fun. That's why her mom was visiting, is because their family friend was getting married. So Cassie was in the bridal party. So she did that. And other than that, I, continuing to plug away on my quick course. I'm actually using Supabase to add database integration, because I want something fast, simple, and like has an integration, and they have some packages that just make it easy to add Supabase. That's the Postgres hosting provider, in case you're not familiar with them, but they kind of package it up. They also add like auth on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to. My use case is super, super simple, but maybe I should say super simple.
Simple. It's also super chill. I would recommend Supabase. It's pretty great.
Yeah, so I'm kind of excited because I haven't really played with it, so it'll be my first time implementing it.
Nice.
Yeah, news for the week of August 4th. Shall we get into it? You have some big news.
I have some big news. My JavaScript Blazingly Fast talk at NDC Oslo is now live.
Yes.
You can watch it.
Finally.
And and I can share it. I've had a private copy for a while that I've been sending around, but now it's public. You can watch it.
I've watched it.
You can learn all of the tips and tricks for making things be fast. And I front loaded it with bang for buck. And I'll let you know the first tip is to cheat. Is just make it look like it's fast. Don't actually improve the performance. Just the appearance of performance is often good enough. So that's step one, is cheat. And then for the other tips, watch the show.
That's right. And you should go watch it. I watched it all and it's great. So there's some definite stuff in there that I didn't realize that you talk about. So
we go into the weeds.
Super
I talk
valuable.
about the JIT.
Yep. You probably keep hearing Erik talk about JIT, just-in-time compiler. So he has some tips for how to make the JIT happy, which is really cool.
That's right. WebStorm has some pretty big news with their newest release. TypeScript Go language server is experimentally supported, so you can try out the new TypeScript Go language server. That's a wild step for WebStorm because they're definitely working on some beta software there, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It made me want to try and put it in NeoVim again. So I was like looking around. It's like, has anyone done it yet? I'm like, I can't find anything. Also, it's impossible to Google because there's like already a ton of like just the old school TypeScript language server, TS server stuff out there. So I'm like, I can't find it. My Google foo is not working.
Yeah, this is really cool. Now, you can do this or have been able to do this in Visual Studio Code for some time now by installing the TypeScript native language extension or whatever it's called. But WebStorm is shipping with it now, so that's pretty sweet. We read a blog post from V8, the JavaScript engine, on how we made JSON.stringify more than twice as fast. And this is something that is available currently in V8 13.8 Chromium 138. But this is really cool. So it's an engineering blog post, so it goes into some detail of like how they set up, the implementation. There were some cool things in there. I think one of the things that stood out to me, which isn't in the headline, but I guess that they redid some of the implementation for number.prototype.toString to use a new algorithm. I guess it's called Dragonbox. I have no idea what that is. Maybe Erik, you do?
No.
But it means any code that converts numbers to strings, so not just JSON serialization, is going to see a performance boost for free with that. So they tuck that in there as like a little extra, which is pretty cool. Now, there is some like requirements that your object graph needs to meet for them to use this new fast JSON implementation, but I think most use cases are going to benefit from it. But do you know what some of those requirements are?
Yeah, so the big one is if the V8 runtime can determine whether or not it's going to have a side effect, it can go down the fast path. So if it has a side effect, you're out. So if you're doing if you have a fancy object that's doing some fancy things, which is probably unlikely, but if you're doing some fancy things, you don't get the fast path. If you are a simple object, you're more than likely just going to get the fast path. Also, you can't use the replacer or space arguments. So if you're trying to do like pretty printing and stuff like that, you can't go down the fast path yet. You cannot have a custom .toJSON method on your prototype. So no custom serialization logic. That will also opt you out. So you need to be using bog standard serialization. No indexed properties on the objects. So if you have like index properties for like 0, 1, yada, 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 like if you're doing weird stuff, you're opting out there. And then you also need to have simple string types. Some internal V8 string optimizations like constring can require memory allocation to be flattened before they could be serialized. The fast pass avoids anything that would trigger an allocation. That's something that's hard to influence as a web developer, but it should just work in most cases. And I think your best bet is short strings that have ASCII characters. If I'm reading the blog post and like reading between the lines, that's not what it says, but I'm assuming that's what they mean.
Nice. Do you know, like if you have like a getter, where you can do like a get or a set and like an object literal, like that would probably not serialize fast is my guess.
They don't explicitly say that, but if I were to be a guessing person,
because it's a function, right?
Yeah, I would say that it probably opts you out. because it's got to do a function call.
Mm-hmm.
And then how would they know if it's side effect free,
Right.
without doing code analysis?
Yep.
So my guess is if you did that, you're already out.
Yeah, that's kind of my guess too. I think the moral is that just keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, plain old JavaScript object.
I honestly didn't realize that you could override a toJSON method on objects.
I've done it. Oops. So,
why'd you do it? What's the use case for it?
It's mostly because I wanted to see things in a specific way in console.log.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it's not for anything useful.
Yep. Understood.
It's mostly for like DX reasons. So there's now a reason to maybe not do that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We've got a minor release in Bun that does include some notable changes for TypeScript developers. The big one being they now include an expect type of helper in the Bun test module. So you can do type level assertions in tests. And it is actually compatible with vtest because you can do the same thing in vtest. And of course, these are checked by the TypeScript compiler, but they don't do anything at runtime.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So you can do your type level assertions. I like that this is becoming kind of a standard thing now in these test packages.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because your types are an API.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yes. And we really do need to do a deep dive episode into type level testing. So stay tuned for that. The other thing that they included was just some minor TypeScript fixes. I mean, I guess one is sort of major. I guess the types bun package, you had to use skip libcheck if you were using TypeScript 5.9 because of an incompatibility. They've updated that. So I guess there was an issue with array buffer types. So now it doesn't conflict anymore. Mm-hmm. And you can get rid of your skip libcheck.
Yeah, this was actually an update in 5.9. They TypeScript updated array buffer to be like slightly different, so that's why that happened.
Gotcha. Again, the types are an API with possible breaking changes.
Yeah, very interesting. A piece of news came across our desk. Mastra, I think that's how you pronounce it. Mastra is announcing a TypeScript AI conference.
Yeah, for all you TypeScript AI builders out there.
Yeah. And what's this all about? Because you know how I feel about AI. We'll just put it there. But what's this all about?
Well, so I've mentioned before, I've played with Mastra. So it is a AI agent framework written in TypeScript. So it's an SDK, and you can use it in Node.js for sure, probably Bun, but you can basically build a TypeScript application that builds agents. So they provide a bunch of primitives for that. Like it's built on top of the Vercel AI SDK, which takes care of like model routing, which is to be able to just say like, I want to use this model, I want to use this model or this model, and it sort of abstracts that for you. So you can use an OpenAI model, or you could use Gemini, a Google model, or whatever. And the SDK is abstract, so you're just dealing with a model abstraction. And then Mastra adds on top of that for stuff like workflows are like the biggest thing.
Okay.
So what's kind of cool is like you can define functions that are tool calls, and you just give it to Mastra, and you give it a description, and then it does the routing for you. So you can imagine someone saying like, what's the weather in Minneapolis? Well, normally you would have to write the logic that says, is the user asking about weather? What's the city? So I can pass it as a parameter. Mastra does all that for you. And so you basically just have a function that is like get weather. It takes a city, and that's defined with a Zod schema. So it knows, hey, it accepts a city parameter that's of type string, and it makes sure that the right data is being passed to your tool call, your function call, and then you can go do stuff. And then you can go on top of that, and you can chain multiple tool calls to make a workflow. And then that's how you can do like pause and resume. Mm-hmm. So for my use case, I want to do like a DevOps agent that has very well-defined things that it does that, doesn't do too much with my infrastructure, but I need to make sure that it gets past the right data, that, I have a human in the loop workflow where I approve what it does and things like that. And so that's what
like super chat ops.
Yep. So you can do like Slack ops and stuff with Mastra. So yeah, it's pretty cool if you are building that type of application.
And a tool call, just for my own education, is a piece of deterministic code that interacts with like a standard API, like a standard REST API or something.
Yeah, and it's sort of a ongoing joke, I feel like, with AI application developers, where the irony of building an AI application is to minimize the amount of non-deterministic things happening so that you're basically doing mostly deterministic stuff. But I think where the model AI stuff comes in that can be helpful is the conversational routing, being able to infer what the intent is from a piece of natural language is like, was always the biggest like obstacle when we were, building conversational bots a long time ago.
Right.
And now is a lot easier with like GPT. I think where it starts to get pretty hairy is when you are having the AI create stuff for you. And that's where I think a lot of people become skeptical for good reason.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and this feels a lot like the Star Trek computer where, you ask it to do a thing and the thing is implemented deterministically, but it parsed the natural language, which I think is where it really shines.
The parser, yes.
Where it can map intent, the conversational intent really well and plot it in like a vector space, like embedding. So like the places where I found it useful in particular is like search. Like you can get 90% the way on search for like 10% of the effort. Because you and I worked on old school Solr and Lucene indexes where you needed to manually like tokenize and boost and stuff.
Yes.
And that's a real pain. So that's like one area where this becomes super useful is search for me at least.
Same here. The database that I use, RavenDB, in 7.1 or 7.0 added the ability for semantic vector search. And you can use whatever model you want to, and it takes care of the same boilerplate where you basically give it the documents that you wanted to index, and you have to explicitly tell, like, here is the data that you get. It doesn't just get blanket access to your data, but then it can do semantic search on that. So I'm really excited because that's going to enable some really nice, like, user-facing features for my app where people can, like, I want to search for a game that came out in 1980, or like, I want to search for a game that came out blah, blah, blah. That's really hard to do with standard search, or being able to be like, I'm looking for all the Final Fantasy games. Like, you have to have everything. You have to have that support in your API of like, searching for a series or something like that. And it has to be encoded.
It can certainly help with matching too. Like when you're doing like an import of someone's like Steam collection.
Yep.
You'd be like, okay, this game is the same game, but in different regions, it has a different name.
Don't even go there with me, because I spent 4 weeks. I spent 4 weeks building custom Lucene boosting rules with my RavenDB index to get that working to 99.9% accuracy. So I was able to do it, but you do not want to see the boosting code that goes along with that, because every single heuristic has to be accounted for. And there's like, it still can't catch everything, because someone might have on their list a Pokemon Red, but they're a German speaker, and so maybe they fat-fingered, a German word that is supposed to be whatever red is in German. And so even with the localized name, which I do have from the database of Pokemon Red in German, if they misspell that word, it doesn't get matched, because it can't find it, because the tokens just don't match up.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that like a semantic vector search is going to really, really help with like multi-language, multilingual searching and things like that, especially for Japanese titles or, things like that. So
I have good news for you. I think this will work out pretty well.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah. This is like the one use case I use AI for, is searching. So like if you're looking for a content search pipeline in your company, definitely look at this. It's really great.
Yeah.
And it can be unstructured text too, because it doesn't care if it's in JSON or if it's a CSV or whatever, as long as it's got semantic meaning in it.
Yeah. All right. You ready to go on to some community highlights?
Community highlights. All right, let's get to the first one here.
I've got one for you. It's from Robert Hameetman, and it's a blog post titled How I Built CSS is Light-Dark Function in TypeScript. And it starts out saying, this weekend I learned about CSS's light-dark function, which automatically adapts colors to user preferences without JavaScript, and then goes on to say, so of course, I wanted to know how to re-implement it in TypeScript. And so it's kind of cool. So he goes into how he did it, how it works, and then one little highlight, the thing that I took from it, is that there is a thing in ECMAScript called finalization registry, and I never knew about that. I mean, I was talking to you before the show. You've actually heard of this.
Yes.
Do you want to explain like I'm five what is finalization registry?
Well, first off, I'm going to say is you probably shouldn't use it. So it's a bit of a hook into the garbage collector and memory management inside of the browser. And the finalization registry is a way of knowing when something is being collected in the browser. And browsers are not guaranteed to tell you, to give it to you timely, for security reasons. They're not, they don't have to ever tell you to either. Some browsers just don't tell you. But in some specific use cases like this one, it actually does make sense.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of an educational blog post, so it's pretty neat. So you should go check it out. The other thing that I saw on Blue Sky, one of the Oxlint team members, Motion, just bleated. I'm going with the new word, by the way, bleated.
Bleated, not bleated?
Right, because it's almost like a sheep will bleat, It just flows off the tongue a little bit better, I feel like.
Better than bleat?
Yeah, and a bird tweets, but a sheep bleats, and on Blue Sky we're all sheep.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, they posted a Blue Sky thread on adding type-aware linting to Oxlint with TS Go. So this is powered by TS Go lint, which is itself experimental. And then this -- type-aware flag, I believe it's being implemented as, is another experimental flag within Oxlint. But I think this is pretty cool. It is sort of showing a bit as a peek into the future of something that we talked with Josh about on the State of Linting episode of native linters being type aware. So I think this is pretty cool. So we'll see where it goes. No pun intended, I guess.
Yeah, this is experiments all the way down.
Yeah, it's experiments all the way down. That's right. I got a tool watch for you on the tail end of the episode with Liran about talking about TypeScript security. We mentioned a few times this REDOS thing, which is regular expression denial of service. And it is something that you can fall into with just vanilla JavaScript and TypeScript when you're writing regular expressions. Well, wouldn't it be cool if you could guarantee that your regexes were not REDOSable, if they were REDOS proof? And there is actually a library called regolith that is relatively new that protects you from REDOS. And so it actually uses Rust to make sure that your regular expressions are compiled in such a way that they cannot be REDOSed. So this is a drop-in replacement for regex, but it only runs on the server, and it uses Rust and linear regex under the hood. So in the worst case, it has linear time complexity compared to the default regex found in TypeScript and JavaScript, which has that exponential worst case, which is what leads to that denial of service.
Exactly. I am going to be using this from now on.
Yeah, I notified Liran about that. I tagged him, and he was like, oh, I need to add this to my awesome TypeScript security repo.
Yeah.
So this is really, really cool.
This is super cool. I can imagine, perhaps, since it's written in Rust, maybe we can get a WebAssembly build of this in the future, and we can run it in the front end. That would be nice.
That would be nice.
Less important on the front end, unless you have another vulnerability, like a cross-site scripting vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because you just REDOS yourself.
Yes, yep, exactly. I have another tool watch for you. This one I saw in Hacker News. It's called tsef, which is a CLI tool to filter TSC output and only show errors for specific files and directories. So it's written like a sort of like a Linux style, CLI application. So you call TSC and then you pipe its output to tsef, which is TSEF, and you can pass in a glob to match against. So it'll only show errors for those specific files or directories that match the glob pattern. So, I mean, that's pretty cool if you're working in some capacity of you just want to show very specific errors, which has happened to me when I work on like lab environments and stuff, where I have a big TSC project, but the learner is only working on a portion of it, and I only want to show errors from like files that they've touched, not the entire project. So I could see myself using this for future TypeScript labs and stuff. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I can also see this being super useful in like a migration context. Maybe, in addition to TS migrating, or the tool that we had from JSON, and we'll provide a link to that if you want to take a look at how to migrate TS configs to different versions. But this might be super useful if you were in like a monorepo context and you have lots and lots of TypeScript to migrate to the latest version. This might be a great way so that you can be like, okay, I know that the CI will break in these areas. I just want to focus on it one, directory structure at a time.
Yeah, that's super nice. The last thing I got is a discussion on Reddit that I wanted to highlight, which is what tools and libraries do you use with TypeScript to make your dev life easier? Well, the top rated response is kind of funny because it's basically like, well, TypeScript gives me everything I need. So I don't really use anything except I do use a library called TS pattern. And if you're wondering what is TS pattern, it's a way to do pattern matching. And then you might be wondering, well, what's wrong with like a switch statement? And so I think one of the commenters summarized it nicely. They said it's not just about readability, but mainly about making sure that a chain of conditionals exhaust all the cases with no stone left unturned, which switch case, chained if statements, nor ternary operators can guarantee. It also provides type narrowing between match cases, which is pretty cool. So I think a lot of people were chiming in that particular thread saying like it's really great for like very specific cases where you would have a large set of if statements and you want to clean that up and make it more readable. The other library people were chiming in with was, of course, Zod and other schema validators. Archetype was also mentioned. And again, if you're not familiar with Zod or haven't used a schema validator before, the main use case is on the server side. You use the Zod schema to validate or parse the request that you're getting from the client, since you can never trust what they send you. We talked about that in the security episode. After the parsing, you can confidently use the type corresponding to the schema by using the result of z.infer, which is an API. It basically can infer the type for you from your schema, which is really cool. Another library, Erik, you've used Husky before?
Yeah.
It's basically a way to run scripts on Git commit hooks. Mm-hmm. And it was a really common way to do that with node packages, but a bunch of people chimed in saying left hook is better than Husky and you should try it. And someone said, yeah, I switched 2 years ago and never looked back. So if you're looking for an alternative to Husky, what I took away from that was take a look at left hook. Two other libraries that got mentioned, effect.ts and xstate. And we're going to hopefully dive deeper into effect soon. Stay tuned for that. But it is a way to write more resilient sort of error checking and async await workflow code. And it does a bunch of other stuff. But that's really popular, and they were saying that they really enjoyed that, and they liked using it with xstate, which is kind of more of a advanced state management library. But the main thing there is that it has state chart support, so you can like serialize your state machine and work with that in a little bit of a better way. It's a popular state management library. And then finally, the last little library that someone threw in there is called Never Throw, and we did talk about something like this in a previous episode, but like as one commenter said, it's a fantastic library for when you just want a result of T, like so many languages provide out of the box, but you don't want to buy into like a whole new ecosystem. And so that's basically what it gives you, because we talked about, throwing exceptions as a way of like handling failures, but you can also, a lot of like Rust, you can return a result type. The result type encodes like, here is the value, or here's the type of error if there's an error, and it makes that handling a little bit easier. So Never Throw just gives you that. It doesn't do anything else fancy.
Yeah, there's been a whole renaissance of coding style around just returning like errors as values. And that's kind of what this is about, is like errors as values. One, it avoids hidden control flow, like throwing exceptions jumps you out into a random spot in your program that is hard to reason about. So that's one maybe argument for result. errors as values. And if you've programmed in Go or you've programmed in C, that's basically how these work. For the most part, there's an asterisk on that C one.
Yes, and I use the same pattern in my C# application logic code. I don't ever throw exceptions. I use a result type.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some cool highlights too.
Yeah, so we have from the community a new Excalibur game that I wanted to throw out there. Is one of our contributors, Justin Young, made a fast-paced Lumberjack game called Timber Clone.
Fast-paced Lumberjack game. Tell me more.
Yeah, there's two keys. It's left and right arrow, and you have to avoid branches as you're chopping down a tree. Nice. It is really funny. I was cackling when I watched.
And of course, because it's an Excalibur game, it's written in TypeScript.
That's right. And I have a link to the source code here, so you can take a look.
Perfect.
Another interesting podcast came across our desk, Weekly DevBrew with Daniel Ehrenberg, who is the current president of ECMA International and a TC39 veteran, about how JavaScript evolves and how it works. And it's a great listen. Go check it out.
That's cool.
And the last post I have is from Joke Bailey, which reads, Jake Bailey said on their bleat, devs will be like, why is my TypeScript so slow? I don't have that much code. And then at the top of their code, it's import React from React, import DV from some huge database schema, import star as icons from library with 10,000 icons re-exported, import GitHub from the entire effing GitHub API graph. I'm like, yes, that might be why it's slow.
I like this little nickname for Joke Bailey. So, Jake, whenever you post a funny bleat, we will feature it as Joke Bailey to end our community highlights.
That's right.
TypeScript FM is sponsored by Excalibur.js, the friendly TypeScript game engine for the web. Like many of you, I got into computers because I loved video games and dreamed of making one, but game development always felt a bit intimidating. Instead, I built a career in web development, though that dream of making games never really went away. Then I met Erik, who showed me I could use my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills to create games with just a bit of game design knowledge and the right engine. Excalibur.js makes game development approachable, offering everything you need to build 2D web games. Arcade physics, sprites, animations, input support, and integrations with tools like Tiled and Sprite. It's beginner-friendly, yet flexible enough to grow with you. Our team has published 10 games using Excalibur, all written in TypeScript. If you're a web developer looking to dip your toes into game dev or sharpen your TypeScript skills, give Excalibur.js a try at Excalibur.js.com. Click the big tutorial button to start building your first game, Excalibur, a Flappy Bird clone. After that, join our friendly Discord community of web developers who love to help each other and share game dev tips.
I have a secret of the handbook this week. Did you know that you can index into TypeScript types in TypeScript expressions? And I have a link to an example on the Excalibur code base where we implement a state machine that I haven't advertised very widely because I was like, don't use it. But I use it right now inside of Excalibur to model the sound API, because like you can have like playing, paused, stopped, and all of those states do something different to the underlying data structure. So I needed a state machine to manage it. Anytime you find yourself having more than two Booleans in a class or in a function, you might want to think about a state machine, because because odds are, if you have 3, 4, or 5 Booleans, the Cartesian product of all the possibilities are probably states that are invalid. So that's when you want to reach for a state machine, because you can model the states that are actually valid between those however many Booleans you need to represent it. Anyway, you can index into types. So you can say, hey, I'm going to pass you a type. In this example, I have a tmachine config, which is a big JSON object, and it has a key of states. So you can just index into the states, and I can extract those states as strongly typed string union. So now we can .go, and then I can transition, automatically get the type completion for every valid state that I can transition. And all you had to do is pass me an object with the keys that are the state.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was wondering. I believe in a previous episode we talked about a similar pattern of doing type level dictionaries, basically, where you can do the same thing. So it's like a strongly typed dictionary, but you're saying my type is like tmachine config, and in that type, I have a bunch of keys. Every one of those keys represents a name of a state, right?
That's right.
And so then I can do like key of, right, to grab the stringly typed union of each of those states, which then I can pass into a function parameter to say, like, here are the available states that I can transition to. And so that's all strongly typed.
Yeah, and the way I usually do it is I make a helper type called like possible states, and it takes like a T machine, and then it does all the type goo to make that happen. I did something similar earlier. I've been working on a thing to do like sound managers, and I was doing the same thing. But did you know you can index not only into objects, but you can index into arrays? Now, that particular branch of the code, I don't think I'm going to actually merge, but it's the same thing. You can do like T machine, bracket, index into there with like single quote states. So I can index deeply into that type. But you can also do that with arrays or tuples. You can do number, and you can get into specific indexes inside of an array and get the type out.
I've done that before.
Which is wild.
Yep.
And maybe heinous, but it's something that you can totally do.
I think it has been useful for like utility functions, but I think for tuples and stuff, it's super useful to do that. All right.
Awesome.
Got some cool links?
Got some cool links. This one came across my desk, and I'm kind of a compiler nerd lately. So I equally was nerd sniped by Marvin's blog post about speeding up the JavaScript semver package by writing their own little parser to make it go much, much, much faster. So I definitely recommend checking it out. The grammar for semver is actually pretty simple, so it's pretty easy to parse. And they go through some of the philosophy about like how you can make this type of thing faster. And it kind of boils down to like, well, we're doing duplicate work, and they kind of have a pithy rule, which is parse, don't validate. So I recommend you read the blog post, but they have an example of writing the little parser code for it. And it's surprisingly terse. And I thought it was really neat. And they got an incredible speed up with their custom parser of a lot, 25 times faster here in their blog post. Yeah, so they did good work.
Can you explain for a second, how were they doing it originally? Were they not parsing it, or were they using some other parser?
Yeah, so right now inside of NPM, there's a package called semver, which does a couple things. It does parsing. It also does validation. So it has a few functions. It has a satisfies, it has valid range, it has sorting, it has comparison, and then it has simplify range. So these are all things that NPM might need to do with a particular version number. But a huge portion of the satisfies calls are also called by both valid and valid range. So there's like a lot of duplicate work happening. So that's part of the reason why they say parse, don't validate.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of duplication happening to validate the input correctness.
Did they happen to contribute that back to the semver package as just like, here's a pure parse, method that doesn't do validation?
That's a great question.
I'm just thinking of the open source spirit, like maybe other people can benefit from this parsing too. But
it's pretty cool.
Nice.
Another cool link I've got is, if you know anything about me, I really like web components, and I'm a huge lit fan. Lit HTML, LIT HTML, it's the web component library from Google. But there's a new kid on the block, Enhance.dev, and they do HTML first, full stack web development. So this is like doing like SSR with web components. So it's really, really cool. So it's like web components, but a full stack app.
Nice. That is pretty sweet.
Very interesting. A few of our contributors have been really interested in this API. It's really very similar to lit HTML, and it looks pretty great. You should try it out.
So you can progressively enhance these elements with interaction or JavaScript if you want to, but that does not require JavaScript to build an app.
That's right.
That's cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah, very nice.
I am a fan. I'm definitely going to try that out. And my last cool link of the day was shared with me by a friend on Discord. It's called Mitata, which is a benchmarking tool that loves you. Hakuna Matata.
That's what I thought immediately.
Yeah, and it's dope. Like, This thing, if you've done the Dino bench, it has a very similar API. But this thing is so cool. It'll like do plots in the terminal for you to see how things are performing. Like it'll give you every like statistic you could ever want about your micro benchmark. So you can be like, oh, this took, 1 + 1 took 300 picoseconds. That's what I want to know.
Nice.
So I thought it was really cool. I'm working with a friend on Discord to do some like graphics benchmarking and do like game related benchmarking. So that's kind of where this came from.
Nice.
So we're going to be exploring this as a possible option. But in the meantime, if you need to benchmark your JavaScript, this is a cool way to do it.
Yeah, that sounds sweet. And it's a standalone tool.
Yeah.
Nice. I've got a couple cool links. One is it's not even a blog post. It is it's like a discussion forum post, but it is by one of the Evernote developers. And they're basically sharing how content editable, which is a HTML attribute that lets you do kind of rich text editing on the web, how it is so horrible on Android and just how bad it is, and like all of the workarounds that they have to do to get rich text editing to work on Android devices. But what's funny is that it kind of actually turns into a testimonial for this tool, which is called Prosmere. So it's a rich text editing tool library, I believe. And it's so customizable that they were able to implement all these workarounds for Android devices on it. But I think it's just one of those examples of like something that you think should just be so easy, like to add rich text editing on mobile, where it actually is the absolute worst thing.
Woof.
So you can check that out. But I think Prosmere is probably the thing you want to check out if you're looking to add rich text editing. The other thing that I saw, which is just sort of neat, which again is sort of like this, like niche tools can be popular and can do really cool stuff that you don't immediately think about. One of those things is, can I write legal documents with Markdown? And all of the like weird quirks with doing that, such as conditional clauses, cross-references, imports, generating PDFs, and like how do you update section article numbers when you move an article area? Or can you declare the parties that you need to refer to throughout the document? How can you templatize that and do other repeated data that you would do in like a legal document? And so someone's created a library to do that. So it's not even just a library. It's actually like a tool with a visual editor that you can use to create legal documents in Markdown.
This is cool.
Yeah.
I have the need for a legal document editor. And by legal document, we're saying like lawyers are involved.
Yes.
Like, and courts are involved, not like it's legal Markdown, like, which is very loosey-goosey.
Yeah, and this is built with TypeScript. So if you want to see how it's built, it's open source. So you can go take a look at that. It's called Legal Markdown.js. So I'll link to that.
This is so cool.
Awesome. Well, that's the end of the cool links, but we have to do our Minnesota long goodbye.
That's right. It's time for the long goodbye. So, Kamran, what's your big takeaway for this week? I can go with mine.
Well, I think one of the things that I want to do a little bit more is understand how Zod works a bit, because I just finished writing a clip in my course that goes over Zod, and I'm not using z.infer currently, but I'm thinking that in my original lab code, I manually wrote the type for like the schema object that, it's supposed to be like a help desk ticket. And I created the type manually, but I also created a Zod schema. And so now I'm realizing that I can actually infer the type. Like I don't have to create a, interface. My ticket equals manually list the same properties that I just did in my Zod schema.
That's right.
So I'm thinking that my takeaway here is I could actually simplify some of the code in my course using z.infer.
Totally. Check out the Excalibur tiled repo. We have some examples of that one.
Cool.
Where we just have the Zod schema and then we use that type across the repo.
Nice. Well, what about you? What are you going to do?
Yeah, my big takeaway for this one is that there's like this constant thread here of performance. So like there's my talk, obviously, which we don't need to rehash. Go check it out. But we have V8, working on the JSON performance. We have WebStorm doing the TypeScript Go language server, which is going to be fast. We have Bun doing some speed fixes. We have all the stuff being written in Rust.
Mm-hmm.
We have all of these tools that are trying to make things fast. Really, I'm like speed seems to be the name of the game lately.
Yep. Well, it's no surprise to me that things that are evolving in the JavaScript tooling space, we are now getting to the part where we need to make them more efficient. Like we can migrate stuff to Rust and things just become faster because we want to make things more efficient. Like these things just naturally evolve over time when there's competition. And so because there is competition, that's why they're getting faster, because we want our V8s to be faster. We want all this stuff. It's all going to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's totally agree. And I think I'm just going to put a little asterisk on performance as like a closing thought there. Be careful about not digging yourself into a hole because you can performance optimize forever. Like, so there is a point where it's good enough. And you know what? That point is whatever you can get your product manager to say. So get them to say a number out loud that you can write on the wall or on a document, and that's a good number.
Yeah.
So
I actually have a real life story about that. That's really quick. We had to rewrite this system that dealt with master item data at Target, and the old system would fall over if you tried to edit 10 products at once in the UI. So for the rewrite, we actually had it on paper as the goal. The new tool needs to be able to edit 200 items at once, within a reasonable amount of time. Within reasonable being like, it is not going to crash the browser tab. It doesn't take 30 seconds. It should take like less than 5 seconds because it's not going to be milliseconds to do that much data processing, but it needs to be reasonable. And that was the goal. And so the best part about that is that it always provided a measuring stick that our product manager could latch onto and made sense to her. Like when we could say, hey, it can actually support 50 items right now, but we are not at 200 yet. So she could say, oh, well, we're not quite there yet, but we're almost there.
Yep.
So anyway,
definitely
agree.
Yeah. And that another thing I'm going to say, double asterisk, is just because you use a certain programming language does not mean it's going to be fast. You can certainly write slow software in Rust. So I think hitching your cart to a programming language, unless it's like the one that makes you happy and productive and it suits your use case really well, I think you need to just be careful because, you can write slow software in any programming language. So just food for thought.
Awesome. All right. Now we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah, now we're going to say goodbye.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronigus.com and Erik is at erikonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.